I think we've done a good job now summarizing sort of last conversation in 15
Yep.
minutes. So we can now hopefully segue into and continue the story of God and find the holes. And while you're maybe going into that next argument, I'm going to, in the next 10 minutes or so, display an interesting comment that I got on the back of our last conversation. I would love your feedback on that.
Yeah, please do. So the first argument we got only as far as really, I think, chapter 3, argument 3, and we did an awful lot of talking, because so many of these individual arguments actually involve about 10 arguments. So you could say this is 300 arguments against the existence of God. So the first one is God loves abortion. Thank you so much, Chris. That's awesome. This is
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, God loves abortion. That sounds weird and counterintuitive. I love this argument, and I've used it for a long time. And it's particularly has particular purchase because so many Christians see themselves as pro-life, and they're so big in the abortion, pro-choice, anti-choice debate. And they say, God, life starts at conception, and life has sanctity. There's a sanctity of life. And you go, okay, fair enough. I mean, I disagree with that. I disagree with the whole personhood debate, and we can get all philosophical about that, but I'm not going to. Yeah, I agree with you, Christian, whatever. Okay, if you think life starts at conception, you need to explain why God, who is all loving, has designed and created reality for humanity such that somewhere between, and we're not sure, but somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of all fertilized eggs die before they come to term. Right? Whether this happens right at the beginning with a lack of implantation, whether it happens in the first trimester with a lot of sort of, other complications that can take place, whether it happens miscarriages throughout pregnancy up to stillbirths, right? All of that whole range of stuff that can go wrong accounts for somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of all human life that is created by conception. So if you're saying that, in America, X million babies are murdered, humans are murdered each year, which, is problematic language anyway. But if you're going to say that, then you need to account for why God, your supreme moral entity, has designed and created a reality in which literally billions of human lives, as you define them, are dying each year. And over the history of time, that is many, many, many billions. I mean, we are talking serious numbers here that fail to implant or are rejected in utero, or what. It doesn't really matter how it happens.
So, Jonathan, how would you then address the counter argument that would say, well, this particular sanctity of life is meant to be observed within the human species, but for the creator and the designer, he can take and dispense of life as he willeth.
This is the most because they've got nowhere else to go on this. I mean, I think this is really worth noting, is that they're forced to say this, because I don't think they want to. I don't think a Christian would really want to say, God has the right to take life as he wills, which is what this argument is. God has the right to just snuff out life, because actually it makes God look morally problematic. So then they are forced to do another move, which is to say God is not a moral agent. God has no moral obligations. This is what William Lane Craig does. But you can understand why they do this, because actually they're forced to do it. Because really, you wouldn't want to do that. You want to say God is an amazing moral agent. If you were starting with like, how can I imagine? What would I imagine of God? God is the perfect moral agent that does things that are just really obviously, clearly, morally brilliant, and everything's fine. And I understand why everything works like it does. And there's moral intelligibility of the universe, right? The problem is there isn't moral intelligibility of the universe. God does loads of weird things if God exists, like creating humanity such that most human beings die before we even realize they exist. And then we have to say, well, God's therefore not a moral agent and has no obligations. And then you have to jump through all these hoops. And I would disagree with, all of those movements. I think it seems obscene that God has the right to take life. As if I go back to the analogy I said last time, which is imagine you, Hani, a lab scientist who is a genius, and you are able to create sentient life in your own lab. right? And you create these sentient creatures out of nothing that all feel and have lives and feelings and all this stuff, and you create them. Like if you were just a sentient lab scientist that did that, and then you created these beings and then you shot them all in the face, right? Like if we saw that, we'd say, you can't do that. Those are sentient beings. Although you're responsible for creating them, they are still like now sentient beings with feelings and stuff. You can't just shoot them in the face and kill them.
But
And
Jonathan,
you can't just go, well, I created them, I can kill them.
It's actually gone one step sinister, because if a mad scientist has done that, maybe trying to create a perfect animal, and that animal start disobeying the creator and say, okay, I brought you out of nothingness and I'm going to turn you back into nothingness, and it's the end of the story. But imagine that mad scientist would make that being eternal and torture that sentient being, for being, reaching all these shortcomings after creating him out of nothing. He's gone further than just terminating that life.
And it's worse because actually God knew that would happen in advance. It's like, God, I'm going to create this universe whereby I know that billions of human beings will be conceived, and I'm going to snuff them out before they get to like even be born. And I'm going to know about that in advance. It doesn't appear to fulfill any objective. Like there's no greater good that comes of this. Mm-hmm. So most of the problem of evil is like, why does all the suffering exist in light of omnigod, right? So theists will present things called Theodicies, which are reasons why this horrible scenario exists, right? In this case, why would God create a world in which like fetuses would die like that? And it's like, and especially if the mother doesn't even know about it, so you can't build the soul of the mother by getting over this terrible like problem and then becoming a better person as well. Like imagine, like in most cases, the mother doesn't even know. So we get having all these snuffed out life forms that humans don't even know about. We only find about it through science and whatnot. So you can't even build a theodicy that makes any sense out of this, because it can't be connected to any human behavior. It's just like, it just looks horrible. And so therefore, as we say, the theist then has to say, well, God has the right to do it. It just has the right to do it. Don't ask me.
I completely agree with you. Another scene, the one just before the Exodus, and obviously Pharaoh doesn't let the Jews go, and suddenly God takes a license to end the life of all the firstborn, the kids, just to twist the arm of Pharaoh so they can let his people go. What has these innocent children do? And why choose such a horrible way why just change Pharaoh's heart?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other kettle of, goodness, how you can kill all firstborn Egyptian. Literally, it says it very clearly, all the children of the nation, because after hardening Pharaoh's heart, so that you're killing them because Pharaoh said no, but you hardened his heart such that he said no. So you're killing children because of something you did. A God, like it's just morally obscene. So therefore, the Christian has to come back. I know Ray Osham has said this in the live chat, which is, it gets back to the whole skeptical theism. You can't know the mind of God. Don't question God. He's infinitely more knowledgeable than you. So there is a good reason. You just can't know that reason. It's like, that is absolutely not good enough. So this comes back to an abductive argument that we talked about before, which is, if you know about, all these billions of fetal deaths and blastocyst deaths, if you like, if you know if that's your data point, does it better support Omnigod, who is all loving and has supreme responsibility and power in designing, creating the optimal universe? Or does it better support naturalistic atheism, which has no need for that to be have a moral dimension at all? So it's just shit happens and fetuses die and it's horrible, and let's do stuff that can stop that or better that or whatever, right? But we're not beholden to making our world fit to some kind of moral paradigm. Now, what does it better support? Naturalistic atheism, obviously. So abductive arguments here, this is where you go, yes, you can bolt on some kind of don't question the mind of God, but that's all you've got, and that's not good enough. And it really, like, if I was thinking about what hypothesis does this universe better is better explained by, I would say, naturalistic atheism all the
Uh,
time.
before we move on from this argument, because I think to me this is quite obvious. 1-0, like that's an early goal.
Yeah.
And VAR won't even be able to stop that.
Nice.